Okay, welcome back. I see that some of you are making your name tag tents. That's really great. It would be helpful in terms of our learning your names if you did it in black marker.
genla kuran zu gi thong de le do number 2 di ani taw nyu nak pu chik do a kam nyu la ko ra di nak pu di gi thiro na da kyan zu gi ming di
Like this, right? Yours is hard to see. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for doing this. It's going to help us a lot to learn your names. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the teaching demonstration assignment.
that nibo di genla gi number 2 la da nang le se gore kharso chego chi yor di khares la bai na pha lupti che di pha migdön che gi chego di ins.
Okay, so since you've decided that you would like to stay in the groups that you're in, that's great. Each of the 9 tables will do a group project.
the number 2 susu ni ruga ani cha do wa de la ruga gu yore ani ruga re re ge ni chego re du gores.
These projects will be presented in the last 2 days of the week.
the chego du bia di ani nga ju thanda jinda choye gi nin thama ni de la che ins.
Each project is 25 minutes long and will include some primary data from your research.
the chego re re na ya ma jinda ngo su che chora di kama ni senga che an din nang lo la kya ju gi simju che shebe ani ne chu ye an tos chi chu gores.
We have created a number of topics that you could choose from, but we want each group to do something independent, no overlapping between topics.
the genla khuran zu gi jushi chu de kha chik del ma ani thoge che yes an din nang lo ne number su damya res khuran zu gi revala ani ruga re re gi jushi re re dam ba ma do ya ruga ji gi jushi ni dam ne ani nya den de ma yung re wa chi gi yes.
If you would like to do a topic of your own choosing, that's perfectly fine. You have to get it approved through us.
then ya su su gi ani jushi ji dam gi is la ba ine digo res in jushi dam ba ding la genla khuran zu gi digi yeme gi ta khaso nga zo chokse ma suna di shu go res.
Each demonstration is going to be 30 minutes long, so we're going to do either 2 or 3 presentations per session.
제가 디 ring 망어서 제고 제디 까마 숨주 디 무슨자 초된 레르랑 아주 루가니 야나 망나 숨마도 로투 마레스.
We've built in time into our schedule for you to work on these projects together in the class.
다단당 아주 딘라지기 제림 디 낭로라 아니 캬안주기 제고디가를 내가 제기 뒤주에 아주 쇠샤이스.
Each presentation is going to be assessed through a rubric that's shown here.
디 제고레레 콘주기 리우믹 시송게 토네 다야인스.
Also, we're going to have a full Tibetan version of this sometime later today.
다딩 아주 탄다 피위나 주르심바레 제자 리우믹 디 탄다 젤라 피위나 용그레스.
Other aspects of this assessment is we will also have peer assessment. So you will have, your group will also assess your colleagues.
다디 초감체 딜라 겐라 호라니기 직 남기로와 다나시 아니 루가 수수기 루가 센수기 제고디 컨테스트 중에 디에 초감 남고레스.
And at the end of each presentation, you are going to have a slide with all of your group members' names and what you contributed to that presentation.
다 남아 저기 록동님이 수기로와 디스디 타마지로와 타마딜라 루가기 파르디체 라찬 상마 안 미수수기 디 록동님이 수야다나 제고딜라 아니 카르소레 튕규르 가린낭바디 꼬요고레스 네 미디기 디낭레 미디기 디나레스라네 창마 세우지는 꼬요고레스.
So in thinking about assessing each group member, as you talked about and you presented some ideas here, that's our way of trying to assess each group member's contribution to the project, is that you report it at the end.
제가 겔랑 호라니기다 총미 레레기 디나룰라 아니 샴덱 마수나 가르쳐버래 내가 가르쳐요래 디 아니 신야기 체도 넘버 2 수수 내가 가르쳐버디 디나를 꼬고 레스 제가 아니 초감 제약이다 단다디 가르소랭 아주 림바 마수나 카시시 겔라 디나 티도알.
Are there any questions?
About this project.
그냥 저 윤주진계나 저당 윤주제가 조직대가나 초박하가 차대라. 그냥 나도는 양지 윤주제사 그래서 주제 가로 차대. 디강한테 간다세 세고요.
Earlier you mentioned about the group using some of their data from the research they did, but each group okay. So each group will do their a research, and then you want them to include the data or the data that they have.
Great question. I don't think I was very clear. What I would like is, so they will do
Research on their topic in the research literature, not research that they've done themselves. Does that make sense?
알레. 캬즈다 수수 주시라그와 디갈라다 심주체 아니 심주체에 디카레슬라바이나 아니 디단 주시 디단 데베다 루가기 조시단 데베 아니 제좀기 심주 라 제좀카 로네 디낭로라 니추 용야다 티와 용야다 두주단 데베 심주디레샤.
So there's a requirement for each presentation to present some data. It's just not some data that they got from another paper or does that make sense?
제단다 단다디 심주기 장도 디나라 샤고레 세저와 디다 캬주기 제좀 망불로그와 제좀 로바 낭로네 아니 제좀 두주 미심바기 제베 심주로와 안 두주 낭로라 니추 장도 여바딘데 직 아니 표저 제고레스.
Any other question?
저 심바 US. 네.
예, 就是嘛，把这那应该能给你送上说。那第就是心情接受的，当然学过来呀，但是第我说没写的，但是我在这里个，大家说过多年不那个，安尼主巴当，去地方颜色，地过了大陆，主个颜色送上。这当这研究是讲了这个，看这那样。
Okay. So the literature research that they are going to do, are they connected with the two concepts, the concept number 6 and 8 that you are going to present this time?
So a good question. So all of the topics are related to concept number 6, and so whatever topic they choose, they will present research related to that topic, but overall, it's all about concept 6.
The 가르소레 캬주기 단다마 최고 두비에처와 마 롭티 나야디 디 가르소레 고도 닝부 얘기 나로니 tuk바 다가라 차기레스 라 아니 심주 체세 심주디야 다가라한다 아니 대화 차기어레스.
Okay, great. I'm going to switch gears now. I don't know how to put it in presenter mode. You see the mouse isn't. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, hang on. I do not know what's happening now. My whole entire browser is closed. That's exciting.
tanda tunsen chukba di rida dagan la rida di imba sunza number so di shimju shi di samlo ta da shimju gi pebo logro lo ne ani ko dayu ta ko jargi chetona ning ji mo gi resum go rangran su nang chue gi thone ani da chödan da ngo chödan chi yorwa di namsha di da ani khonzu gi ani sungsha ba di 아니 제와 연구도에 민도에라 아주 지금 콘조기 심주디네 다유다 튠바요나르다 아니 지마 다유마 데시갸도 라 튠베 베천도 주디네 초레야도아 라 디마 데시갸도 잠발라 페나 체리기 심주날 덴데지 튠요레 안 다유 나로라 숭야디 덴데지 숭게 버스도 이따다레샤슬라니 야 미튠바이 용 초그로와 두주 공부하시는 인지 모이길.
It's coming.
한간저기 된다 다유다 두즈낭로라 부고로 아니 가져네 가져봐도 아니 게다 트고도 디 간주낭라 세가요 말와 다 차론 조단디 레버 차론 조다 냠도 아니 language 아주 지 토비아죠라 살론드에 두주 아주 매날 매버 손자 한 뒤에 중나야 삼로시 땅트나 닝지모도 아니 페나로 부글로 당본에 숨바버도 콘주기 디기스지 고츠그레스 라연디 아니 나란주 낭베기 아니 남샤시순 제바이나 딜랄하 고마츠에디 갈진레스 카와투고르라 아니 페나 나이 나군진 셰야다보다 두주이나 야콜로체 징네마도 용고민도아 di induda yang aran chugi na shungi na lolada nganzi se lengge di ko yebar da ge di ne yores lab go ra da di pa khandes thungi yeme ra tuzu kan la samlotang ani samlotang bai ne cheba che pe mangu yores samgodo.
Yeah. So let me take that off again. So you think that I need to do slides aren't loading yet. Maybe. I don't know what's happening. Okay, here we go. All right, so where do I do this mirroring situation? Up here? Screen mirroring? What do I want it to be? Do we know? Okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not gonna bother. I'm just gonna absolutely wing it. It's awful. Okay. Oh yeah, that's great. Hopefully this is loading now. Aha, okay. Great, thank you. All right, we're going to start talking about concept 6. And to remind you, concept 6 is the brain makes it possible to communicate knowledge through spoken and written language.
당아주 단다 고도 닝부 축바치로와 디콜라 투두 슈기yes 아니 디 축바디 카레스 라바이나 레베 다 신윤세네다 ngaranzu기 또 데베다 체마 용거와 두주 아니 기기 규네 아니 게다 이게 라 두니니 규네 아니 다제 아니 제토구요레 karsola ki yigi yunes ani ngaransu ki nangi khodo di shimbala pha da de che di ani lebe ki thoche ki yores.
So the learning objectives for this section are listed here. I'm not going to run through them, but I do want to mention that some of this is going to be a review for y'all.
당 아주 세종의 미규저와 디 단대들마 방진에 토고도와 아니 견라코랑 레진 루구메스 안 디나로 카셰직 캔줄라 짜시에서로 차두그레스.
From a teaching point of view, though, one thing I really like to do is remind you of what you know, so anchoring your knowledge and then expanding your knowledge into new areas.
다 아주 티탑색으로와 티탑다 아니 종탑기 차니 슈바이나스 아니 가두이나야 수수기다 강심바저라 심바디다 아주 띵도로지 표제체네 라 심마로지 표제체 안 디네네 파 아니 갸게고라 지상 견라 쿠란족이 티디에 된진 팅이 넘버족이지만 아니 티디에 디 티답디 표제체 초그레스.
So the first topic we're going to talk about is communication. And I would like in your groups for you to think about, list, what are all of the different types of communication that you can think of?
다 통매기 주시디 당아주 커뮤니케이션 해야 되로와 아니 다 동랭 해야 되로와 제산디 무슨 자다 루가 수수수수 주도나네스 딘데기 체탑 릭민다와 카리어레 찾아지마 토지스로 제스.
Let's come back together. I would love to hear what you're thinking about, and I would love a contribution from this group. And since you have your names, I would like to hear from Nawang. What Can you tell us one mode of communication?
다레 제당 직 송로나스
당아주 그룹 나도 주도 지도자마 가가시 텐스라 다카직 라와나라 아니 도기 다당당지도 니마니마 신나도 좀 미파도 되어지도 더 된다당 다당레지도 된데도 직차인스
so they came up with several modes but one that they were talking about was using smoke as a signal to in the ancient old times.
Wow. Excellent. Okay. Gilek, what is something from your group?
Using your head motion.
Head motion, which is something that I noticed that you use a lot of. Can you tell me, what does the head motion indicate? What does it communicate to another person?
Di da haritongiyores de la tonan jungsons de go de yugia di manguchigido di da haritongiyores.
다 몸보치 주소 주마스 세져라. 데 몸보치기랑 아서 파이다진 주소라는 안디치그래. 주마스라 안디치그래.
Yes or no? So this is for yes, and this indicates no.
Okay, great. Is there any other, anything else in a head gesture?
Go yugdangi thoni koaliye de yorves.
고유도 번은 드리르지는 리가 tin데 맞지세야 그 계지고 유한 주야라 아주 지금 리가 지고라 아니 디 리가 디 맞지세 근데 드리지는 리가 맞지세야지 다로 리가 제야 딘투수나 딘 드리지야
It also can signal commands, like if someone is doing something wrong, you do this to say that, stop doing that.
Right, okay. So this is an important gesture that we use to communicate.
That the conzo inji signal gesture lagdwa ngazu lunga gi namjur sorochi gi thone ani datoya dires.
Okay. Somebody from this group, I think I want Lob Singh. Oh, there's 2 Lob Singhs. There's 3 Lob Singhs. All right, you're right here with the microphone. Lob Singh Kinra. Is that right? What's a mode of communication?
데 가사 초바 용문에 다 대체데 아니 이제톤에 다 대체다 야 진다 리모트 베데 리모트
Okay, so in written language and also drawing, by using drawing.
Great. Okay. I see a hand up. I see you. You have your hand up. You're not stretching. Let's see. Your name is Lobsang Demachos. Is that Damchos?
Yeah.
Damchos.
ngazu group na te drudur juandi ngazu lakwa yama chik chene keda tan jiwa di chi jus dene yang ngazu sina ma ane chik ke shukshim mo daw chi tan ya chik mi yama godate jiwa.
Okay.
Dende daw chik.
Yeah, one hand using hand gesture as a mode of communication.
Okay, so we'll put that hand and head motion as gestural communication. Wait for it. Your name is Jamyang.
Nanzo dire burda la de chikche ani burda loa desolara nanzo loa desole yigi dus burda yigi tira konzo du zogo ginyane ne konzo date ajda ida ni yidala na river desogo soso pugu di ni semla nyara ajda pugu di sembana na la sona ani pugu di shiro yadre.
So,
Ribegi.
Ribegi, Pugu Sembal Nyaya di Ida, okay. So one, the Braille system.
Great.
And then another, I don't know, they were talking about mental communication.
Mental communication.
Yeah, where it is said that for some animals like tortoise, the mother would hold their offsprings in their mind, in their memory, and once that's gone, the offspring dies, or the baby dies. So.
How do we know this?
근데 임바디 간데스 하고 그래서 리베기 제도디 부구시기에 어디 간데스 하고 그래서
다디 야 나라 따스지 하고 저기 이렇게 말라 이마 건조 저거 송지나 디도아 건조니 카르스데 아마게 셈기냐르디요 아마데 신도디 부구부구데 라지 신도요 부구데 믹스기 니마니마 톡니지 오마테데 든디 지고메아체 부구디 아마데 셈기 말로 데서도 부구디 손이지 두고요 아니 아마데 신도디 부구데 다가란 신도고요 어디 내단데 하고 개인사 촌종이 백갑라서
it's he read it somewhere that the tortoise mother would hold her babies in her mind, and when the tortoise mother dies, that mental communication is broken, and as such, the baby doesn't survive. So it's not. So the theory ki keja marwa.
다디 체리케제 마리 라월 칼라월 하고 마서라 건설적인 거 송주 집값이 디칼럽도 나서 딘디디서 그 셈기 냐라디 마도 젬발은 아주 가르다고 이나스라 리타야도 송수 세상 딘디 띵안속에 이다세야 딘사레스 거다.
Okay, so they are assuming that it might be some form of mental communication that's happening because when something happens to the mother, it affects the baby.
Okay. So it's an assumption of this type of communication, not demonstrated or evidence-based yet.
So that dindegi ida se di yube chobajik chegiyosa res inaya di dindegi ida di ani takchegi lamne ko pangda yoba tanda chagyu insa res.
Okay, I'm gonna put that there. Go ahead, Calvin.
ngaso dire se tanda zejo gi di do chemical communication la di kain se wa yana da budama do so ge ya khorang gi zel de ne budama shamba de gi zel ya chik che tanda zishin de so yin ne zishi chi ora shiwa dang ko gi zel le ne zishi shamba de so la ko nyanga jong so la de da te wa la de ne ko so gi nga zel le ne budama de so le ne shamba da le yo ya de gi tanda de chen na da nyamshi de do de song dang zejo gi de
so chemical communicating through chemicals, by releasing chemicals, by species like ants and some trees that they release chemicals when something happens to them.
Great. Cullen, I'm going to push you on that a little bit. So this is a communication, chemicals, between organisms, okay. Can you think of another example of chemical communication, maybe inside of an organism? I'm pushing you.
Okay, the process of chemotaxis and the communication that's happening between sperm and eggs.
So we have it between animals, between cells?
Cells, between cells, yes.
Great. And specifically in this, what is it?
Between neurons.
Between neurons? Do you know a specific name of some chemicals between neurons?
Action potential.
Chemical.
chemical signal.
Transmitters.
Neurotransmitters? Great.
Neurotransmitter, chemical
Great.
signal.
You're in a neuroscience class today, so well done. There's one obvious one that nobody has said.
다 지금 어서 더부 시우직 남디 단다 수간직 송마송스. 펜제 다 동레제.
Oh, no. One obvious mode of communication.
디 다 동탑 라고라 다데 체탑
럭달리서 럭달 제죠. 자기에게 돈 선택하대. 럭달
So, using telecommunications as a mode of communication.
럭달 제죠. 럭달 자기.
Yes, but...
Wobble.
A verbal communication.
Verbal. Is there anything else on this list that we should add?
디나로라 신다 가주년고야 가르도스.
나도 럭달래 답이요. 인지냐 뭐 뒤에서 인지게 세워라. 어디 인지 기기되어도.
Using language.
Sign language.
Would using language fall under verbal?
기 표주체디 단다 나기 톤에 제와체 디날 수서베스. 나기 다델라.
Does it using language also fall under written?
다라시 아니 기 표주체디 단다 아주 티베 톤에 다데체 디날레 렙서베스.
Are you using language when you use braille?
다나시 아니 브레일 부릭 표주체네 디치디 기 표주치기요 나스 디기 다데 체다치 이나스 라 using electrical signals.
Similar to, are you talking like within the nervous system kind of idea? Yes. So you can have electrical communication in the nervous system? Yeah, great.
자기에게 돈 communication 체대.
거의 차경다. 숭엔디 차경다 알로스.
Oh, I see a hand up.
자기에게 communication 체대.
Using social media as a form of communication.
Social media, I think, might be included in telecommunication, perhaps, maybe under that same.
디 페제 디기 월라 ngazu da kharsore 타ring 부 ngazu logi any pejuchene any dedache dinalo la lesser reverse.
But in social media, you're using written language, correct?
da di thagya jiso thalam du nanglo la ngazu ma thiegi ani keda di pejuchi go ras da dedi.
Sonar yoragi.
Solar
SONAR.
Sonar. Yeah. Is that electrical? Oh, no. Yes, great. Sonar. Okay. We have so many ways of communicating. So we're going to focus now a little bit on animal communication. And I want to show this video. I'm not sure if it's going to work.
당 아주 단대데라 다데치다 망고직 나버서 송송아스 다 튼로심쟁이 나로라 아니 다데치야 간데스 용거유메디 아니 년통직 된 예스
Three distinct alarm calls. One for leopard, one for snake, and one for eagle.
Since we don't really have a very good audio for that, I will
maybe we can
play it again.
use the mic.
Let's try this.
The vervets react differently when they hear the different calls. The leopard call prompts a retreat into the treetops, while eagle prompts a dash into the underbrush. It's tempting to view these calls as words. Doesn't the snake call signify a snake in the same way that the word chair signifies a chair? Well, it does signify snake, but in a very limited way. What it actually means is look down down at the ground and watch out. The vervets can't combine the snake call with any other calls to produce any meaning other than watch out. And you can modify the chair to mean brown chair, red chair, small chair.
Okay, that's okay. Maybe.
Three distinct alarm calls. One for
Okay, wait.
leopard, one for snake, and one for eagle.
Okay, those were 3 distinct sounds made by these monkeys to represent 3 different types of threats.
Tanda Judy or Judy Nyanga Rig Minda Sum Las and Kurangi Dratunda and Rig Minda Sum Yungudoas.
They had a specific call for if the eagle was approaching, if the leopard was approaching, or if a snake was nearby.
Chesanda Tanda Chagoa Namni Chago Yundu the Datongic Kurang Agent Dots, Tana Sik Yundu Tanya get Dang Agent Chick. Tom wake up so that Tanya get the Dang Agent Chick in a sum doas.
So this is an example of a auditory or vocal type of communication across these animals.
That the Tanda this Simjan di Nanglola and Azu Mark Pijuchene, Yana Nashi Pijuchene, any Date Chetap Chagi or rest.
Yeah.
The mental state teaches access of average and also reaches 2 liters.
Yeah, your means abnormal is to access of 2 liters.
So so that means there are emotions which is 2 liters.
2 liters.
Right?
So give me an example of 2 liters. Come on, give me an example. Yeah. Give me an example of that. Give me an example.
One which a person, for example, a person who is suffering from mental disorder and feeling so low.
That give me an example. That emotion.
This is like
Okay, that's a different type of communication. What can this type of communication provide that the animal communication does not?
Dandechidan digi karsongazo jintulas tulas ani tanji piugi dadechidan digi tre matuba kariores la
Junsen so logic project answer things how man do di chigle yo mares.
So this type of communication allows for us to use logic and reasoning. The other type not.
Right, exactly. So you're communicating in this debate that was happening about, if I remember correctly, about emotions or the nature of emotions. Is that right, Calvin? Do you remember that? This was from 2018.
Pena kozu junse tone data matuba kande hakures animals. Sinje desu junse tone shemate kande hakures nganzo. Junse tado junse tane so chadasal dinimeba.
So are there specific reasons why we are assuming that animals are not able to communicate reasoning, their verbal communication?
This is a great question. I'm going to pause this question because we're going to revisit it in a few slides.
No. We'll get
to it. Okay, so we use language to communicate thoughts, ideas, logic, argument, etc.
Nganzugi da di dadrigi tablam di phejuchene susugi ani samlore ani lola chariya duzure ani junse tensi tuzu ani pha shenla tuen thugu orbas.
Can you now compare in your groups? Think about the difference between communication and language.
ruga susu kilarian tudur chenes ani communication adelta ani language ki ni barala ani kheba khariyongure. So you want them to think about the difference between the two?
What is different and what is similar? In fact.
Ale kunini barala tsungba khariyore ani khaga khariyores.
What are on the next slide?
Teacher.
Interesting conversation about
combination.
It's not 100% true that birds, they are engaged in cortex. So in probably some of these more innate warnings, that type of stuff is supportable. But birds is a little bit different. So, but I think it's good to bring up different areas of the brain. Right. I have that on there. I think the problem is, and I'm close to them, how would we know? We're done at 2. Okay, can we come back together?
Lasso.
Who would like to contribute their thoughts about what is similar or different between communication and language?
Daki dan dadeni parala ani tsungba khariyore am minrawa khariyore di namazu susunges.
Okay, wait. Your name is Yeshi.
Yes. That tsumba garnila는 게 안소디 르카크 디드제네 아니 파주들라 아니 닌자기 파 다트 투야진다게 다 라바트 소테 투야데 아니 tsum바린디스.
So one similar aspect is that both can be used to communicate something.
Great.
to the other person.
Okay.
아니 문순바 가른들라는 아니 디 깨다 되네 아니 준센다 내일 몸보지파 라테 투야 되는다. 다디 라다도 또 되네 딘디 티서보다 준세 딘로 파테 투 문디스라.
Ale kharsa ki thone junzen da to gres ine dare ina di
티서보다니 파 라테 투 문디스.
Ale. So we can use language to convey reason and logic and go probe deep into the phenomena, but communication on the other hand is not necessarily able to do that.
Okay, that's wonderful.
And danda chindige. Indi aso national de damen ligi namjigoni chitene phajedeli ting sobo mataba da dimbajala siwarate tindi chiyora ina ite khungshira te hago munde mare tindi yo sares.
So in Buddhist literature there are references of teachers able to communicate their teachings without using any sound, like without using verbal communication, mostly through physical gestures and emotion expressions and so on, and that too profound teachings like reasoning and so on, but we don't have experimental mental evidence to prove that, but there are references of that in the Buddhist literature.
So what I understand you saying is that you can communicate more than just verbally. You can use gestures to communicate ideas, thoughts, teachings, etc.
Tanda di karsore ngagi peje da peje mache ne ya karsore da ngaju susu gi samlo da ani gyunsen da du tuen thugu yo ba chik sungu yor was tanda din tamen lugin ok. Yes.
I agree. I think that definitely gestural communication can communicate these types of interior thoughts.
Chedada ngaju lunga gi namju gi thone and lagda cheyala so wadinde gi thone ya ko nangi samlo da du tuen thugu res tuen thuwa yungo res.
Is there anything else that somebody else would like to contribute?
Shemba kyanzu samju sungye yus.
Mazu mushi drugula.
La.
Keda dande ni mushi drugula.
Kawai na. Ala.
Mushi.
Ale.
Mushi mushi drugula.
So they are thinking of 4 different ways in which the two can relate.
Ne dande yin la kenyiga yin ba de gen la ne luti no ikasidera kedati.
So one type of relationship is that something that is both, right? So both communication and language, and that would be your teaching.
Okay.
Ne dande yin la ne ken mai ba de ne remove ton datyan da ne lo dat is there.
As something that is communication but not a language would be using a drawing to communicate.
Okay.
And ke yin la ya ne dande mai ba de mazo de me ge ton ne da mi shen ba la goya mai ba su su ge ne she tan ro kan shue ro de so de.
So something that's a language but not a communication would be a case of singing or talking to oneself.
Oh, I like so the interior discussion inside of your head to yourself, is that what they're referring to?
Ale tadi nanglol da susu chiglab gyalai di susu samlo nanglol la jig khorne doye chura dila sungu yves.
Ne manzo da sa de mi jamba la goya chedara. Ne jamba misichi ayumar kora korang shetan da.
So the way we are understanding communication is that it is a form to convey something to someone else, and since it's just you, you are not communicating in that sense. So if you are saying something or singing something, you are using the language, but you are not communicating.
Yeah, great. I love that. I've never thought of it that way, but I think I agree with that definition also.
Chazangela di court samlo de des kormanyons ine kyangi sumba na shimedin nang thukudos. 아니 시바디 카레스
시바디 추기다 요라다 깨어마 마다요.
So the fourth would be the sound produced by a river. So it's not a language and also not a communication.
That I also agree with. That is just sound. Yeah.
That it does some rest.
I've lost my slides. Okay, let me move on here.
So,
Language is distinct from speech, thought, or communication.
Ki lawra ki this ani nga gi joba ani samlo ani dadel da ani ta kharsure thade res lagro ta logs never res.
Similar to the way it was presented, so there are examples of communication. For example, the monkeys can communicate, but that's not language.
The pena dande in la ki mai batabudi ani piu chugi ani khoran chu nga phechu chene dande chedi tabu.
There are examples of either animals or computers that can produce speech, but not language.
Dine the karsore nezoda tanda logle dendegi ani joba lagorwa da joba tun tu gore de ina gi tun tu mares.
And language is not your thoughts. Language is a verbalization of your thoughts.
Ta ki se jora ki di ani ngaju ge samlo di marwas ki khares la ba ina ngaran ju samlo di ani nga gi nambala ma phap shaba jigres.
For example, those of you who can speak 2 languages can verbalize the same thought in each language.
Pena cha shaba inas ani ke ni shengen chugi ani susu samlo di ani ke ni gi nanglo la ani je thu was.
As well as we know that if you have an injury to certain parts of your brain, you can damage your ability to comprehend language, to produce language, but your thoughts are still intact.
Yeah, pena lebe chase chedaba dinde la kyon shorba kapsus di kyon shorba do tene ani ke khoya da ke pha ani tya la ani tya matu ba nu ba short nge yores ina ya samlo ta khortu go was.
So when we think about language, we think about it as a system or a structure to relate signals, oftentimes vocal signals, verbal signals, but also written or gestural signals, and those meanings. And it's between people, right? So there's a speaker who's speaking the language and a listener receiving that language.
Tata ke se di khares la ina ani dada theni slagorwa ani dunyi para dewa ta kens ki ani lamlu seneta malachi res and di nanglo la rwa ani ko da kharsure kogen da ani ma tenken chik da ya phajo nyenken chik ani khuni parla ani chungshabe da kharsure nga ju thuga lagora dewa chik chaki res.
So there's several properties for a language system, and you reminded me earlier today that you knew a little bit already about this topic.
Tanda ke ani mala chigi da keju khachik de la koyo res ani number so danji shoge nga ju chego chigi nanglo la andi gi ani namsha ko la tos kyanzu gyunga yoba chig ani gyana khoran sorsons.
So we'll review these key properties again, those properties of innate, learned, productive, and compotentially? That's a hard word to say in English, actually.
저다 디 단다 쿠란즈기 케주로와 아니 찍디달 innate sana lengge rangsin diche learned sana anko jangya yoba jangdobgi ni kharsure rangsin yoba che productive lana kedwin che thuba ro ani multi componential lana chala thuma yoba.
You mentioned already that language is innate.
Do
you remember any of the evidence that supports this idea that language is innate in humans?
현재도 예나 게 현재에는 게 장고거라
현지마에는 뭐 총종 동복하고면도 갈리갈 삼는 거 장고거라.
So they are just agreeing with this. They think that language is not innate because we have to learn it.
예. 내가 저 보고 충전돼서 있는데 여기 아마라 이제고 장고에서 개면 아주 카트 아마서 랍트도 대peche 랭게 인사레스.
He thinks that the word mother in Tibetan, which is ama, might be innate because we don't have to teach the baby. That word baby sort of is able to say that.
Okay.
아마 종고스레스. 게 단다디 게이디다 행기를 말해서 내용도 디다 진다기디 뷰디다 비나 심적하면도 수노 게자다면도 수노도 디콜 행기를 양고 So
he's wondering whether the innateness of language is true for animals as well, like the vervet monkey. Is it innate? Does it come naturally, or do they have to learn?
Okay, let's talk about some of the evidence that's been used to argue that language is innate.
Duviala ra ani chige pangda rikchik pheju chige zulajik tagis.
Are you remembering that there is a critical period in a human's life where exposure to language is required to be able to acquire that language?
당아저 미 임바이나스라 미 부구이나 아니 게이 카리 임바이나 게이디 코란조 토비알라 수수규라 레비알라고라 딜라 아니 뒤식 녜제 뒤식 강 첨부직 이어봐 예배 남샤지 순거라 디 넘버 2 땡기드베스.
So there have been children that have not been exposed to language early in their life, and they fail to acquire language later on.
다들 간제 마 게네 치네 뒤수 녜진지기 낭로라 아니 게디 마코와체 게디단 제와 마초나 아니 고 첨부 차네 게디 아니 신투고요 마레스 제단 딘데기 네다 아라 베츠 망부요 레스 부부딘데 라 부고스네데 미딘데 고 뒤수 녜진디 낭로라 게다 As
well, I think this might be very familiar to you. If you learn a second language after your adolescence, it's much harder to acquire than if you learn that language as a young child.
Di nangchui la kei nipa di jang ma tu bachin di je la jang ba inas an di kei di ani shenya la shivuji kale khaku yoba.
A second piece of evidence is that there are some genetically linked language deficits.
Dene rikchik rwa thanda kei dan dewe rikze khachi ma changwe kenji kei ma shimba o dinde je ngonzi shago res.
So if you have a mutation in a particular gene, for example, this one is called FOXP2, you have a developmental type of language disorder that interrupts your ability to acquire language.
Tatanda rigze ane FOXP2 se rigze chi yores rigze di dilata ngazu gyurdo ro theba ina rigze dil kyen ro chungba ina an dindegi ane khangsa di ani kei da duzu ani shema thu bachene ani Quran la tat di kyen di yungu yores ro acheza kei dan rebe rigze chigla ko gyurdo theba ina and the Kenchin Dako, Judo Tebedi Dako, Nani Udini Tebrugora, and the Kenchene, and Ki Jangmatuba, Ki the Komatuba di Yungores.
This has been demonstrated in a large family where.
We have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mama Lopsin, chicken and Kaplaya, Kuso Karsonga Dosena, Puichi Kenny, Ludun. Dungo all young kish. The key candidacy youngna, coronator rank gate letores. Tinea gisana, this the qua kish tatash leala. This ngotchin your race and course, them by in the men.
So he remembers hearing in one of our classes that children who learn language before the age of 7, any language, they have ability to learn and acquire that language. But after that, if you learn after 7, then there would be difficulties in terms of acquiring that language. That it will be a harder process. Is that?
Yes, I don't know that it's specifically a hard line at 7. So the research suggests that it's up until early adolescence, which is in around like 10 or 12. So, but yes, within the first 10 years of one's life, if you're exposed to language, you can acquire that very easily. After that, it's difficult.
Chidada tinde tusik ngeje pena lo dun la tinde sha thugu me ha ko masons yimba ine ya ani tanda lo ani chuksum chupsi gi ngwa la si yundi lo ta chuchu ni phardo jangba ina ani ko shen thuye chik
Okay, so this is a piece of evidence that there is a genetic component to language acquisition. So what we're looking at here is a family tree of a single family where the red circles indicate people who were affected with a language disorder.
Tatanda rigze dan rewe ki dan rewe rigze chi yores lectura digi ta pangda chikdi thanda dela ani rab khashe chigi ani ti kharsure nga jo kimgyu gi dongbo dela teba inas ani chikdi gi da phodi chungyo yorwa digi mo chungyo yorwa ani marbu di khare osla rigze di ki dan rewe rigze la kyen shu yoba di chungyo yorwa.
So using genetic techniques, they were also able to identify that each one of these people with the language disorder also had the same mutation in the FOXP2 gene.
Chidada duzu mabu duzu gi ani konsola ki top matuya lagora ki shen matuya gi ani kyoncha yorwa di ani dus takche che mabu yunge rwa da mabu sula yona dela Matui Kencha Diores, a Konzugi Rigzela Tayundi, Rigze and the FOXP2 said any do teba and Yesun Chungures.
So this is one of several pieces of evidence of the role of genes and proteins in the ability to acquire language.
That the Ngaju Ki Shen Tup Matup Sejura, Dilla, any Rigzeda. And rigze the tizegi and shugen yube panda kashe yube naloni chigres.
In addition, language is also learned.
Di ganla ta ngazo ki di any jang ne thobiaje res.
I was actually thinking about this idea of language being both innate and learned when I was listening to the physics professors last night talking about a photon that can be both a particle and a wave.
That dango genla di kharsunga zo game machine lagi any udu di labia in chogre sungbe kapsus genla khona di lamsan samlo khorsos ki chora ki di ani lengge in chogre ani jangdop ne thobachi in chogre es na niga yi
tanda digital.
So our genes are
tanda di FOXP2 genes ya di yenge de sa ki kangete se de khoro make jamate ke tindire pet ya kiri shemba jamate pare.
Okay, so those with the FOXP2 mutation, are they not able to acquire their mother language, mother tongue, or is it the case with other languages as well?
They could not acquire their mother language.
I'm
not sure if they were ever tested on acquisition of a second language.
The consola any key niba jiction to you may di tanda chedache me shemasons.
Uba the Sutre,
are those people who are mute or cannot talk and hear?
They are not mute. They have an inability to follow the rules of language, to use the words of their language. Do you happen to remember what language they were? Are they Swedish?
The konzogi ra koranzo gi nanglo la rodangi timji ra tim du takda ane sungmatua komatua di gange chegores.
So I think they could vocalize but not acquire the understanding of the meaning of a particular word, for example, and put those words together in a sentence.
제자다 콘조기 지나 칸에 랍투고요레스 라 임바이나야 다 sigmang 코 sigroup 저부지 쇠네 디체바이나 안 된다 고마초야 된데 강해요레스.
So in this idea of language being learned, the idea is that we have our biology, our genes, creating brain circuits that, for all humans, to create language, and maybe some of the universal aspects of language.
Tang azugi ta rigzejora sugunangi rigzedu zugi ta lebe nanglola chalam dozo ta thuga jaya ta thubiala dichigyorwa ani thochigyorwa an dilatene azugi ki top seyundida gi gi pena jionggi ani keju rigdi ani to thuyada.
But you've learned specific aspects of your particular language. I've learned specific aspects of my particular language, and they are different.
that jiong marsha the jikap ra ki changmala ani thumung du ye de gengi keje du zo ani jangya ra ta di thumung gi keje jikche yang ki soso la ya soso gi thumung membe keje ji yungurwa.
The third key criteria for language is that it's productive. And what I mean by that is that you can understand, let's say, utterance, something that you've never heard before. Does that make sense?
You can understand something that you have never heard before?
So, it's not that you're memorizing sentences. You can produce a unique sentence out of words that you know.
di mbasunda da thangi rigzegi ani ko shugen chene ra ani ki changmal thumon de yebe keje du shen da ya thumon min be keje shen la shugen chigyo res di che ta tanda sumba chero di ani ki ke di ki du gi rangshin chen res yundu nga zu ke ji top cha na shen cha wa ina ra ani tenga ji ani chung manyu we ani chigrup den de ngaran zo so thugu yorwas saba so thuya yung ras so thugore ya tenga ji ko manyu we chigru jig lawa ine so so ko thuya yung go ras.
So language has a system of rules that you're aware of that link sounds into words, words into sentences, and sentences into meaning.
tanda ke Quran sususula chik karsure lamlu sura chik yorwa ani di ki ni gyune ngazu ta dajik rwa dani sumsu dune chik tubya chik ani mangbu dune chik tub tubya rwa chik tub mangbu tubne ani dune ani ko thunda tubya atu sangma ani yong tugo rwa.
And that's something that's been agreed on across the people who speak that language, that those words have or sentences have that particular meaning.
Di ki di pheje singe ki thamage ani thumondo da chik de chik ru je pheje seba ina ani da thumondo len thugu yor eskowa.
When I think about this ETSI project, I know that part of this project is creating new language in Tibetan.
Chizada ngazo emri da phege chenri ki lechar teyonde adigi ani karso ngazo lega masuna mangbu yebe nane chachikdi ani chenri ki ani namshadi ani phege nanglo la tyen ro ani di thanye sawa soye di badi shingyes.
You are part of this creation of language because you are part of the group that is agreeing on the words that are associated with different scientific words that you didn't have previously.
Chidada dendegi gyurim di nanglola ta ngazu ke masuna sabajik sugo ro di gyurim nanglola number 2 di chashe chade res kaisana ani sik saba thanye saba sugi di thanye di ani thunda dendejil kugiyo ba chenri gi thön dendejil kugiyo ba di ani number 2 sangmegi da kharso re ngazu metungi thone ani dadi ani thugiyo ras cheza keda saba tumbe gyurim nanglola kyanzu chashe kechim chade res.
Part of this rule system is that you have multiple interacting components of language.
No, that di ani lamlu sura di nanglo las ani karsura ngazo kegi lamlu di nanglo la ani chashe mangbu chik chala masuna mangbu yobache ani Quran su pensu ani denjo che betone ke di thupdu go res.
So in each language, there are the sounds of that language, so the sounds of the word. There are the rules for the word ordering, which we also call grammar. And then there's the meaning of all of that.
Tati ki changmala ta thumongdu yobe ani chashe khashe ani shuba ina chikdi ani dang di res chik so sore ani di dadang di che ro di nang lo la ta ki so la ani dadang de ji tyen yondu ani digi chönje re yongge yobache ani badi ani thanda ngazu chikjor sodan che ro digi team di ta di nang lo la ngazu ani ki gi teams la ba ina digi ores chik so khandis ani korim di gore chikjor chedang gi rimba di che an dine di chikjor cheshabe ani chikdu gi kodön lenya che ro chikdön se di ani duzu ta chashi ge chewa duzu res.
These rules have been agreed on so that you can have comprehension from the listener and production from the speaker.
Di dodan chero dodan gi team di ani karsure ngazu thumungdu khelen chebe thone ani thupshabachi res an digi ta ngazu goba khar res labaina ro nyengkhen gi thunda khotuya da ani shekhen gi ani kho thunda de pha tyen thuya gi chedu res.
Okay. So, how much time do I have? I'm going to skip through this a little bit because there's something I want to talk about here. Okay, I just want to skip to this. This is a question I think that Gilek asked me a little bit ago. And I want to talk about this idea. So we make an argument that humans and only humans have language, yet what is the evidence for that?
Tang azugi karso rang azu tamja masuna sungya chikdi lagorwe ni mi ke se di mi chukbo la yo resta ngazo kengwe gi nyeri mangbu yebe nanglo ni mi chukbo la ani ke da ke yi ro ke di yo res ta di la de soja shimba simjin shimba chule yo mares la go ra di gi ta dubje khari yo res la wainas.
So what I'd like you to do in the last few minutes of our class is I want you to think about these questions of what would it take? What are the criteria to call something a language? We kind of just went through some of those.
Tatanda azu suja phasang matre suja marwa ningu khala di matre bharat ta thisu dosto di ringa las an thiwani de la azu samshi che yes an chik de la ta azu khangshi ke do ngunjin che la ane chagyen khar khar changu re se che.
How would we know if another animal, a non-human animal, has language?
Ta mi maimbe ani simjen chikla kisi ke do yoba inas andi yoba ding azu khandes chen thu res. Na thudu nangro nas.
I feel like this is the end of where I wanted to. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Yeah. I feel like I didn't need to review all of phonology, syntax, and semantics. Okay. Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right. And all of that was reviewed anyways. Yeah.
So Kariti, thanking chik what is this communicating? Karila. Hamago kare konsugi communication form mangboy relane bhage lab sa ani. Ala.
Verbal is like
Ala chela konsul lab kushara.
That's right, that's right. Incredibly disorienting until they start talking and you don't know what it is. I thought I had called on somebody and then somebody else just started talking. Right? Okay.
So,
Okay, can we come back together? All right. This question was originally posed by Galek, so I would like to hear from Galek's group. Go ahead, tell us what you're thinking.
Tangazoragagi Karasanataga Susu Tony Tony Tsikorodu and Dembachi Gundus Kesadilla.
Ole Kegi Chayan la, and the countries.
Kegi Chaje de la and Sono Tony Tony and the Tsikorodu Dembachi.
Tsikorim da Demba. Okay.
Pana Tsikorodu Demba Man upon a Piun the Gina and the Kedu Yawara Kendamana Yavari, Tsiporo Musiki Yomara. In a Kedas of Pazo Dazo Kugura.
So one criteria is there has to be a systematic sort of order for the sounds or that we produce.
Oh, Natsu Tandandeva, and Kaizena, some not only going to Monsini Jitsumji Kachidanchi or Otenjoris, Pena Nature, not under Nina and the Koram the Naganda and a Kayo Margin Sakarazina, Site Koram de Gigachiora, or the Koram
Dembagores,
or Koram Dembagores, and some Lotonsia.
Candes, some lot the Candes?
Some lot the part. Some lot, Tigatonde and Koram Hago Chiora, some Lotonsia.
So, one criterion would be for the individual to know the meaning of the sound, and then, in a specific way to communicate.
Okay, so we have an individual. There needs to be a specific sort of order of the sounds that the individual knows has meaning. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
One more.
So danji dekha nembe dora kongong go wangi sta minsini ji sonshu chi be keje dang ham yesu yana dang ha rumo tela tenes da ko ache bas anda rumo la go ga yesana ngaso gi siba kholo jomden de shachi go siba kholo na nabe chu chajang gi dinalo denba sheda tende yala chuni chajang rumo na ten to da tende ting sa bo tende ko to ya dela tanda language de sara sam go dos tanda am som yarda
Kunlon da jebe gone mingsi ni ge ene
jubi geje dang hams tini yesu che tini rumo tela tene da ko che.
Okay. So any form of any methods of communicating would be okay as long as it's able to systematically convey a meaning, right? So it could be sound, it could be written symbols, it could be drawing, but the main criteria is, criterion is for it to be able to convey a meaning.
Okay, so the vervet monkeys that we saw the video of, they had vocalizations that had meaning for the particular type of threat. So does that mean that those monkeys have language?
Yes. Tatanda tenda di chagyan duzu shaba inas tatanda piu jiora ani piu dila ke yor veslana ke yor veslana digir ves kansana kurangi dadi tungu yorwa dadi kita tenda ani tun tugu yorwas.
Tan samna tati kora tambo tani tawi kablya chapse kanani jik sablo tani tayo me telan ria chagiro ena language sayate Tandanga so draw me kendo tate mai ke kang la pa yo tini do shisha chene ta ne te ma to chau ma re shamba khora pisara tambo ne ko
so I think he's saying that it'll depend on how we are defining language, right? If we are thinking of language that's used by humans, then that automatically precludes all other forms of communication used by the animals.
That's true, but I think we talked about the differences between language and communication, and we also demonstrated that we thought language was the ability to convey thought, yeah, go ahead.
저다 당기 아주 게다 아니 단델 뒤니 바라 케바샤인데 게세야 돼 아주 삼로된 통해 직 어디에 질랑고지 제바르와스
tene nambi shunga na namji ngaso ane jochek ta sindalya ta ne jondo ko karno gore ko mare seti kang chita namji e ande shema bo shura jochek ta ina jondo ko karno la tu gore ko mare apena ne anchi sanje chinje la be wange yang ta pena joshang so chu soyendo ta de sodi
so there is a big debate within the Buddhist epistemology as to whether a language should have a motivational aspect to it. So someone may utter something and then the other may hear it, but if the utterer has no intention or no motivation of conveying that, we can debate whether that's a form of language or. So one example that's given in the text is the inanimate objects sort of conveying meaning by producing sounds that were sort of blessed by Buddha. So Buddha. Sometimes it's said that used his omniscient power to cause inanimate objects to produce sounds that convey some meaning.
This is an interesting debate. I know less about that and how to respond to that. Okay.
제가 근데 콜라 컨데스 삼로 땅고 이메 gel라 탄다 슈투 마손스라 아니 베나 상예기 칭길랍네 다 준신라 소버네 최대에 저라 제가 준데게 다 카스레 주제게 달라 군롱 구구 요 말라이디.
Is it true that that meaning was conveyed through the word, like you knew the inanimate object that sound had meaning because somebody said or verbalized that meaning? Was there an aspect of language in that idea?
다 베나 준신기 아니 다 최템바이나스 바로 년겐디 고고여라 다디 고야기 자저라 다디 낭로라 간주기 남유게 지에디 다쿠람 미디 쿠란기 게 가리네야 디 게기 엔게디단 데네 용고여레 칸데이나스 간제 다 미디 갸르메지나 고 갸게단 데네 다퇴야 디데 튕겨여레야 다지 퇴네 쿠란 된다디 다라 고조레스
베나서 다샤로 시나 베시잖아 신다 미지게 게영 봐서 다샤 쓰고야 돼 미디 게 다랑 시나 마인조로시 이나 그런 게 되게 고요라 다된다고 찐 정사르시
So it could be something similar to an echo. Right?
Jakere pekere la por jesilu ko al tendade te jami kere pepe kere la
so something similar to echo, right? So it's not produced by that, but it's kind of reflected. That the sanjigi sungi takchana shin reves.
다 작샤로 오서라 어디네도 오래 다 강대 진기 라발테네 거기 전생 lungo 요요나 때 담아봐 미식이 거에 같이 세워 말다데 코너에 냠는 그 도바 세치면나 딘디 용계시나 코랑신 그 가리나
pena digi mitaba tungiyonas ani dadinalola mitaba se tsidi yongorebe ya samla digores okay so he's saying that there is a wind blows and then the leaf rustles, but it produces sounds that convey, for instance, impermanence. So, the person who listens to it may hear the word impermanence.
Okay, as you understand, the idea of language and communication overlap and kind of depend on how they are defined. And the idea of other species having language can also depend on definition.
Dandel ta ke ni parala ani dewadi konyi ni musum ta kharso tumbe cha mangbo yunggo dowa dinde res da dunyi ko dewadi khande imai se di ngazu ki ke se de ngunjin khande chigin be da de lai de ngunjin khande chigin be dil ra li ge doas din ashin chine da tundru semjing gi nanglo la ke yore yo mare se di chokjin ne ngaran zu ke ngunjin chedan le ra li ge roas.
We'll talk more about this in the next session. It's time for lunch.